Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Matt here with another game update on Nightshaders, my personal project that I'm doing on the side. I'm a professional game developer by day. I've been doing this for about 15 years or so, and I love it so much that I do it in my free time too. So in this update, I want to go over how I added yet another boss to the game. I promise this was the last one for a little while. How I added another monster and some other smaller features. Again, if you want to follow along with the project, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below, and let's get into the video. I struggled for a little while coming up with an idea for the last boss. I tried a few other concepts and just wasn't really feeling any of them. And then one day my son and I were in the backyard and stumbled across this cool praying mantis. And I was like, oh, he's kind of neat. Maybe he could be a boss, and decided to run with that. It's cool how inspiration can sort of just come from anywhere. Next, I grab a scratch piece of paper and start to work on a design concept. What are his abilities going to be? Really, like, what is the hook of this character? It's really important that I do this step first before I do any of the art or tech, because without it, I won't know what I need or what I'm even making. I left that exercise with 4 main abilities that I wanted my boss to have. The first one, he would disappear, and 3 phantom forms of him would appear randomly around the map. After a brief delay, they dash forward and slash anyone in their path. The next ability is a healing stance, where he sort of goes into a trance and he's invulnerable. Smaller bugs will spawn around him and try to make their way towards him. If they reach him, they're going to heal him for a lot. So players need to try to kill all those little bugs before they can heal up the boss. Next, I have a whirlwind ability. The boss starts to spin around. If he touches a player, he's going to damage him, and he'll bounce between different points around the map very quickly. And the last one is sort of this ranged boomerang attack, where he'll fire out an array of projectiles, and then after a short delay, they'll return back to the boss. So not only do you have to dodge the projectiles once, you've got to keep an eye on your back, because you're gonna have to dodge it a second time. And those are the 4 abilities that kind of make up what I had in mind for this boss. So let's go. Next, we jump into ZBrush to figure out what this guy is gonna look like. I'm going to use a technique called Zspheres here. It's sort of like a posable skeleton or like an adjustable armature that I'll use to, in a couple minutes, make like a body type that sort of resembles a praying mantis, but without any of the detail, which is perfect because in this stage, I don't have a concept or anything. I'm doing that concepting in 3D. And I'm also not going to actually use this mesh in the end. It's more of like a stepping stone for the next stage in my process. I'm going to try to get out of ZBrush as soon as I can, and only put in the bare minimum amount of detail that I think I need to move on to the next stage, to feel confident that I can bring this thing home. So I'll go a little bit farther here with the Z-spheres until I feel like I have a pretty good base, and then I convert it into a mesh. And then I can start sculpting and adding a little bit more detail onto it. So I'm trying to work with big brushes here, not go too close, not sweat any of the small stuff, still exploring like who this guy is, what he needs, what he's gonna look like. I'm not super happy with the proportions here or anything, so we'll keep refining those as we go. The name of the game here is for me to just work fast. I don't want to get too attached or married to anything because I still don't know exactly what I'm making. And there's a good chance that at this stage, I might still throw everything away and start over. I haven't invested much time, so it's no big deal to just toss it and try something new. We just continue on here, adding more details. But yeah, we just kind of keep going, and like I think we're pretty close. This is gonna be good to move into the next stage. Then we head over to Topo Gun, which you guys have seen me use before. It's this cool program that lets me draw dots that are snapped to the Highpoly mesh that we just made earlier. This lets me focus on making nice, clean topology without having to worry about shape or anything else. I can just try to make a nice mesh that's going to be useful for us as we move into making the Highpoly model. Here I'm using the tube tool, you can see, to do the limbs. I can draw little lines and it automatically makes a tube around his leg. So I'll keep going like this a little bit longer until I end up with something like this. And this is generally how far I take the mesh in Topo Gun before it's time to leave and head into Maya. Now we're ready to make the final model. I've duplicated that half that we retopoed before, so now they're instanced, so I can make changes to one side and it will affect the other. I use instancing all the time on this model. I'm working smart, not hard. I'm only usually editing half of something, but all those changes are gonna get propagated over. I can even do it more than just half. Sometimes I'll on the claws, I'll instance each side of the claw, but that'll get instanced 4 times. You can really get creative with that to make your life a lot easier. So cool, I'm changing the proportions a little bit. Now it's like really easy to make those big changes, whereas in ZBrush it was a little bit sloppier. This is like a lot more precise. And I can make those changes without turning my mesh to mush. See here, I'm straightening out the legs. Those ones that were in the sculpt weren't straight. I'm thinking ahead for like rigging and stuff. I'm gonna want those to be on a plane. So I can use the transforms of the plane and then transfer that to the leg. Once I do that transfer, you'll see that like arrow widget thing is gonna reorient itself to line up with the plane. And then I can work at that weird orientation of the claw a lot easier. So now that leg is perfectly straight. It's gonna be a lot easier to work with when I go to animate it and rig it. We're just going around here. You can see like I'm basically coloring right now. Like I have the lines of my drawing already done from that rough sculpt and the retopo that we did earlier. This is the easy part. I'm just straightening some things out. I'm adding like bevels here, some creases. This is really, really fun and goes very fast compared to some of those other stages. I'm playing around with the shape of the claw a little bit. I didn't like how simple it was before. I want to have some teeth on there. Just kind of breaking up the silhouette a little bit, making it a bit more complex and more aggressive looking. And this is what the final model looked like. So I think he looks pretty menacing. He's agile, but you can tell he's deadly. He's got like a sharp edge to him. And he looks angry. Yeah, look at that face. Don't mess with that guy. Yeah, I'm excited to animate this dude. I think he's gonna be really fun. All right, we skipped a few steps here, but this is the low poly with textures all baked. I finished the UVing and everything. So now we're just putting it back together again. And this is the model that we're gonna use in the game. He's only about 10,000 triangles. He looks good. Next, I'm gonna start laying down some joints, and those joints are what we're actually gonna animate. Just like in real life, the body is going to follow the joints of the skeleton that we build, because we're building a skeleton here. Here I go, I'm laying down some of those joints, making sure they're oriented properly. It's really important where you place these. If you get something off, it's gonna deform incorrectly and you'll know it. There you can see I'm also only working on one side. I'm able to mirror those joints and propagate changes I make to both sides. And that's the finished skeleton. So now we're into the finished rig. I've added something called IK. You can see that elbow was bending properly. The IK is what's doing that. And then there I'm moving something called a pull vector, which determines where that elbow is going to point or where that knee is going to point. And I've done a couple little things to just make it a little bit easier on me while I'm animating the character later on. So this will all pay dividends as I go into animation and save a lot of time. This is a very simple rig though by comparison to what the pros work with, but I think it's more than enough for what I need for my game. Here's how the animations turned out. You have the idle, the walk animation, attack A, attack B. Here's the charge up for the heal. This is the multi-strike, that'll be the phantoms doing that. Here's the start of the spin attack. Here's the ranged attack. And here's the death. And finally, after all that work, he's in game and working perfectly. Oh, never mind. He's totally broken. So yeah, I've got some work to do on the implementation. I made these quick little level shortcuts. I don't know why it took me so long to make them, but they're awesome. I can jump right to any of the boss levels anytime. Now we're in the game with the boss. Here's his ranged attack. That's the boomerang projectile. So they're gonna come right back. If any of those hit you, you take a lot of damage. Now this is the like phantom multi-strike attack where he goes into like a phantom state and there's like 3 of them around, and then after a short delay, they attack. So you need to make sure you're out of those decals before they go. Here's the whirlwind like spin attack. I think I'm gonna make this one a little faster. This is the heal ability. So you see those little bug guys crawling in. Every time one of them contacts the boss, he heals for a bit. And that's all the abilities. So now let's see what they look like from above. Here's that phantom ability. There's still some bugs on this guy, but I think it's a good first pass. I'll come back to him later. I think I got to work on some other stuff. There's the whirlwind. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. He's functionally done, and I'm super excited to have all 3 bosses in the game done to at least a pretty good state. I also worked on another character. I'm calling him the Beamer. He shoots a big laser beam after a short wind-up, so players need to get out of the way before that happens, or they'll take a ton of damage. Here I'm working on his idle animation. I think the idle's really important because it generally sets the tone for the rest of the animations and for the character. So I like to spend a lot of time on it and try to get that right. I had a bunch of bird references for this one to see how their wings move in motion. So I tried to replicate that. even though I think his wings turned out more like Dumbo ears. They're just a little too floppy looking, but for my game and how small these guys are in it, it works, I think. I think this guy also has a pretty interesting jaw. It's made up of 3 pieces, so he can really open that thing super wide when he blasts his laser. And yeah, I think he turned out pretty cool. So here's his idle animation, his attack animation, his death, and then here's a loop of all of those playing. And then in game, you can see he does this big windup and then shoots the blast. These guys like to hang back. They're very cowardly, so they'll run away from you if you get too close. And they're more of a nuisance. Like if you're not paying attention to them and you're dealing with some other monster, these guys could really catch you off guard. They do a ton of damage, especially in big swarms like this one. I also added a new ability to the game. I call it tank mode. You hop into this little wagon tank and your weapon gets replaced with the tank's cannon. I think eventually I'll have that shoot like tennis balls or something, and probably have the tank move a little bit faster, so it's a bit more different from the regular player movement. But yeah, another cool little ability for the game. I also added a new music volume slider. So now game volume and music volume are independent. I got some feedback from playtesters that they wanted to be able to interrupt the dialogue, so I added that as a feature. Now if you just push interact again, you can have it autocomplete, and then if you click it again, it will close the dialogue at any time. I fixed a really annoying bug that's been around for a while, where if you try to pick up 2 items on the ground, one of them would get destroyed, it would disappear. So now I'm able to pick up a bunch of items that are stacked on top of each other, and it just works. All right, that's the video. I hope you liked it. I think future videos will probably be a little less new content focused and more around getting this game finished. I'm gonna make a to-do list of all the remaining things I need to get finished before this game's done. I also really need to figure out music. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that yet, so any ideas there would be much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye.
A video is like when you do something and you record it.
Uh-huh.
That's a video.
Oh, he's moving, look. Do you see him?